When I was young, I had no idea about NASCAR. My dream as a child was to be an IndyCar driver, and I have been infatuated with open wheel cars. Started with midgets, and then the Indy cars, the roadsters to the rear engine cars, and the Marios. When you look around at my collection, you look at everything that I admired as a kid. It still shoots a spark. There was a guy right up the road in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, about 2 hours from our house there, named Mario Andretti, who, in my opinion, is still the world's greatest race car driver. He was a racer that a lot of people outside of the racing world knew his name and looked up to.
If there's one car in this group that really stands out above all others, it has to be the 1965 Bronner Hawk that was driven by Mario Andretti in his rookie year, 1965. Mario won the IndyCar Championship 2 years with that car. That car is in pristine condition that is almost unheard of in racing.
I'd heard all of the ancillary comments about the replica being built, and this car was this, and they were, kind of all over the place, and went out to New Jersey, and the chassis was there, took a bunch of pictures of it, called Mario, called Jim McGee, and Jim McGee, who was one of the original builders of that car and worked on it for several years, was Mario's lead mechanic along with Clint Bronner, and we got all these parts and pieces, and I thought, I wonder if Jim McGee will put this thing together for me. So Jim McGee and Steve Panaritis led the assembly on that car, and the car is an amazing piece right down to the engine, built by Joe Bogosian, who did that originally. It's still got the 1965 USAC stamp and seal attached to it. Again, it's an incredibly accurate car. In my opinion, that was probably the most significant IndyCar find and restoration over the last 20 or 30 years. The Bronner Hawk, in Mario's own words, will tell you that's the car that really defined his career.
One thing that's easily overlooked in the world of motor racing and their production numbers of cars is they are typically very small production runs. You can have a race car of one. I love the Dan Gurney Eagle car, chassis number 701. That is Dan Gurney's personal car.
Dan finished second in the 1969 Indy 500 to Mario. Dan claims he would have won that race if the left rear shock didn't fail. And Dan won his last IndyCar race with it at Sonoma in 1970. Also won a couple of other races with it. But what's neat about that car is, again, like the Mario car, many of the original parts on that car. And I went out and spent a bunch of time with Dan to talk about the car. And it was an honor to get to know Dan Gurney while we were restoring that car and show it to him when it was finished.
By the time the mid-1980s rolled around, the March Cosworth was one of the dominant race cars of that era. The Cosworth V8, which was heavily turbocharged, very competitive from a lot of racers, but of course A.J. Foyt, the man himself, wheeled this car on the track in 1984.
You see a wonderful example of an Indy car, and to have a car of that condition with the history of it and the name associated with it is a great value.
We spent a lot of time and money making sure we had what we had, including, I called AJ several times. We got the car running, and I took it around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It was my first laps around Indianapolis Motor Speedway in any type of a race car. And I can tell you that when I went down the front straightaway, I had a lump in my throat. My eyes welled up a little bit because I thought, what a life. Here I am driving down the front straightaway at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the same tub that A.J. Foyt did the same thing.
The 1950s front-engine roadsters really represent sort of the dawn of an era that began all the way back in the early 1900s with that particular platform.
Before engineers suddenly said, wait a moment, why don't we put the engine in the back? Wouldn't that be a great idea? The engines, of course, were in the front. And Ray has a great affinity for that engineering and understanding why those cars are of great value.
Those cars were works of art. When you look at, paintings or statues, that were done years ago, you think, okay, they did that with talent and passion and desire, because they didn't have all the tools that we had today. That Roadster era was just amazing. You know, you could still see the driver, you know, guys in short sleeve shirts and just digging. Those were brave guys. The 1958 Bose Sealfast Special, paths cross in life. I worked for a man named Jack Stoddard, and he told me about this Johnny Boyd and, you know, this car, this brand new car, and how it caught on fire and he'd gotten burned, and he never forgot that story. And then through Joe Fiore, and when I got into the cars and whatnot, Joe said, hey, there's a car I restored coming up. It's this number 9, and he gave me the history of it. And sure enough, it was the car that George Bignati owned, Johnny Boyd drove. So I bought that car. Through my life, all these connections lined up with that particular car. And again, just another beautiful, immaculate car that's really done correctly. You know, that car has probably about as much documented history through its years as anything else in the collection.
I'm fascinated, for example, by the Dodge prototype from '69. There's only one prototype, and that's the car. Ray has it.
Began life as a production Hemi Dodge Charger 500, but by Nichols Engineering was re-engineered, redesigned with the distinctive pointed nose and the big rear wing, and Buddy Baker took that out to Talladega and for the very first time cracked the magical 200-mile-per-hour barrier.
If you look at it, that was a very important time in NASCAR. That was when the factories really got behind the aero stuff, and they put a huge effort with NASCAR to break that 200-mile-per-hour barrier before anybody, to prove they could do it with a NASCAR stock car. I promise you that that was the most painstaking restoration that we've ever done, right down to the point to where that car was painted several times. We stripped it and painted it like it was painted throughout the years. That car has the original nose, hood, fenders, ductwork from the windshield forward. That is the stuff that went 200 miles per hour.
Plymouth Superbird from 1970, 1 year only, production car, factory 4-speed car. That's cool versus the automatic. It's got the standard 375 horsepower, 440, not too unusual there.
The reason I have that is because of the Richard Petty era and what a huge difference those cars made in that aero war. My street cars have a lot to do with the NASCAR aero wars, but it was also the Bristol Motor Speedway pace car, which gives it a second connection.
Now we look at Ray and his position as a team owner. And when Dodge came to Ray and presented him with the Dodge RT, we see how Ray instantly takes to new engineering and still makes the car work.
It was the first Dodge race car that I ran as an owner, and we went to Daytona in 2001 and sat on the front row with our Dodges. That car got the pole, finished 5th in the event, and it is really, to me, a huge part of Dodge Motorsports history, as well as Ray Evernham and Bill Elliott's history.
Ray's collection of phenomenal race cars will mean a great deal, I am sure, to Mecum. There is great value in the world of race cars.
I just love cars, and I love what cars have meant to the history of America and to me, to my timeline growing up. You know, to think about my name being with Andretti, Foyt, Gurney, you know, Baker, people like that, it's neat, but I hope the credibility that my name brings to know how hard we worked to document these cars and make sure mechanically are original. I'm going to encourage whoever buys them to continue to take them to racetracks, to continue to show them, to keep them running. You know, these cars have always been taken care of, whether it's from the right cleaning products to the right lubrication products to putting air in the tires every day. Everything that's going through is in my collection to tell a story, and I hope that whoever buys those cars will continue to tell that story.